Right, okay, hello everyone. My name is Thomas. I'm the buyer for Wine 52. Today we are here to taste our selection of wines from Marche in central Italy. This is the box that is going live pretty soon. So we have 12 different wines, 6 reds, 6 whites as always, 4 of which are in our premium selection. The reason we picked Marche as our next box is because there aren't too many wines from Marche available in the UK market, and having been there and having visited several different wineries and tasted many different wines, I think there's a great potential for those wines to do very well in the UK market. They represent everything that British consumer is looking for. Crisp, fresh white wines with excellent acidity and great minerality to them. As for the reds, we are looking at sort of smooth, mellow, ripe red wines that are delicious equally with foods as well as to drink on its own. So very quickly, I'm just going to talk about the region. So as I mentioned, we are in Marche, or Le Marche if you like. So if you look at the screen, which is changed right now, you can see it is right in the sort of middle of Italy. So you're looking at the east coast. This is the sort of dark yellow color right in the middle, between Emilia-Romagna to the north and Abruzzo to the south. And just across the mountains on the other side, you have Umbria and Tuscany. So that's roughly where we are. Again, I will not talk too much about the region and the history and the rest of it because we're quite limited on time. So this is the market itself. So as you can see, it's kind of split in several different sub-regions, from Falerio to the south to Verdicchio, Sangiovese in the north, and so on and so on. We are going to talk about each particular region after tasting or before tasting each of the wines. Okay. Now this is what it looks like. So Marche is, in a funny way, it's a bit like Chile, where you have a huge body of water and huge mountains on the other side, and it's quite a narrow strip of the land. So in this particular case, we have the Apennine Mountains to the west and Adriatic to the east, and you can see it on the picture right at the bottom. So you have the Adriatic Sea and loads of mountains essentially. The climate over there is quite moderate, so you have the cool sort of air coming down from the mountains, and you have cool breezes coming in from the sea. And on top of that, it is central Italy, so there's plenty of sunshine as well. So close to ideal conditions for growing grapes and making wines. Not easy, all of it. Most of the viticulture and wine harvesting and trimming the vineyards and all that in Marche is done by hand. Harvesting by machines is quite difficult where you have steep hills like this. Okay. Few things that Marche is famous for. So I'll probably start with the bottle. So this is the classic Verdicchio bottle. So this shape was actually designed by an architect from Milan. He was there was a winery called Fazzi Battaglia who commissioned that architect to design a specific bottle based on the amphora shape, which you can see kind of a little bit below. So he designed that bottle, and then after talking to the architect, it turned out that actually he didn't base the shape on the amphora. He actually based the shape on this lovely actress in the corner called Gina. She was very famous in the 50s. Nevertheless, that shape of the bottle made the Verdicchio kind of stand out from the rest of the wine in the world and in Italy. And Verdicchio sort of took off, so he was super popular in the 50s and 60s and later on. Then it sort of fell out of fashion because people started to take advantage of the demand, and they started to produce lesser wines, and it sort of fell out of fashion because of that. When it comes to food, Marche, as most of Italian regions, they have amazing food, amazing pasta, amazing seafood. Marche in particular is famous for its seafood. So to the left, So to the left top corner, you can see Brodet, which is the sort of famous rich fish stew. It's kind of like bouillabaisse in France. Really quite nice. And the second sort of super famous dish is those massive olives stuffed with meat and deep fried. Really quite delicious. Okay. With regards to the grapes and the history and more details about the terroir, you can find all of this in the magazine Glac that we produce every single month. Is that good? Good. Right. Smashing. Right, on to the first wine. As I said, we don't have too much time, so it's better to focus on the tasting and the actual wines and the wineries, okay? So the first one we are going to taste today is to your sort of left, so and if you lift it up, there's a number 1 underneath. So the order is quite important, so please do not mix it up again. So this one is made by a winery called Terre de Conti. It's a fairly new winery, started in 2003 by Augusto Conti. He's a very good friend of mine, and we actually developed the first 2 wines together, specifically for us. And the way we've done it is we decided not to focus on particular appellation or DOC or DOCG or anything like that. We wanted to make sure we produced a wine that is suitable and liked by our customers. So we looked at the data that we have already from 2017 now, and we looked at all the ratings, and we took the wines to Italy. We let the winemakers taste the wines, and we came up with these. So the first one is actually a blend. So the base of this wine is Verdicchio. Verdicchio is, I think, it's one of the highest planted grape varieties in Marche. But we also added a little bit of Sauvignon Blanc for the aromatics and a little bit of Pinot Blanc. So when you smell that wine, I mean, you definitely get this influence of the Sauvignon Blanc. So Sauvignon, again, Marche is a relatively warm climate, okay? So if you take Sauvignon to this warmer terroir, it produces this more sort of tropical fruit flavors, okay? So when you smell that, you definitely get this almost like mango-like smell, like think about peeling the fresh mango. That's the sort of thing that I get. And on top of that, you get this lovely citrusy freshness of the Verdicchio, okay? And when you taste it, I mean, it's definitely super fresh, but the first thing you get is the Verdicchio. So we use the Verdicchio as a base to give you that, the initial body, the structure, and the lovely acidity. And this is further complemented by this lovely aromatics and flavors from the Sauvignon Blanc. Good length, great acidity. This is what Verdicchio is famous for. When it comes to food pairing, I mean, this is sort of an ideal aperitif wine for me. It's super easy drinking, it's very well balanced, it's got a lovely crispness about it. But if you're having any seafood, sort of light, delicate seafoods, that sort of thing, that'll be ideal with it. Okay. What do you think?
I think it's lovely. Little hint of citrus, like you say. I'm almost getting like a little touch of honey, but really easy to just drink by itself. It's really nice.
Brilliant. Yeah. For us, it was all about the balance. We wanted to make sure that when you have a first sip, you want to have another one after that, and another one. So that was the aim of that wine, and I think they pretty much nailed it.
So you said, you said that it was a mix of Sauvignon and what was the other one?
Pinot Bianco.
Pinot Bianco. I think the Pinot Bianco is a bit stronger in this than the Sauvignon Blanc, which is nice.
Yeah, Pinot Bianco in the warmer climate, it sort of acts a little bit like Chardonnay. So the warmer climate, the more tropical fruits it gives you. So you definitely get that mentioned the honey flavour. That's the sort of warm climate Pinot Bianco for you, if you like. But the Sauvignon gives you that sort of tropical fruit, which definitely takes over on the nose. But the palate is all about the Verdicchio. So Verdicchio gives you that lovely structure and the acidity to the wine, and the citrusy freshness. Okay.
Kind of answered my question. So I was going to ask what sort of bases your decision on the other grapes that you used to blend with it, with the Verdicchio. Was it, you kind of mentioned there about the pineapple, the tropical fruit taste of this that you were sort of going for in that crispness, so you can answer it there.
Brilliant. Yeah, it was more to sort of please our customers really. So we looked at the highest rated wines that we had, and they all had this sort of tropical ripe fruit. And I thought, like, right, what's the best way to sort of replicate this? And in fact, I think I've got the map somewhere here. So essentially, if you look at this map, generally speaking, Marche, the further north you go, the colder it gets, and the further south you go, the warmer it gets. And when it comes to east to west, the further east you go, the colder it is, and the further west you go, the higher it gets, and the colder it gets. So the Sauvignon vineyard is actually, if you can see Fermo, so this is in the sort of green spot over there.
Yeah.
So that's where the Sauvignon vineyard is, and this is quite a warm part of Marche. So we kind of picked it on purpose because we tasted the Sauvignon on its own, and it had this lovely ripe tropical fruit flavour. But on its own, it didn't have the freshness that we were looking for. Hence, we blended that with the Verdicchio. So it was almost like a team effort, that wine, and I think it actually worked quite well. Any other questions about the wine number one? No? All good, brilliant. Okay, so if you guys ready, we are going to move to the wine number 2. And you probably noticed that normally we taste all the whites first, and then we taste the reds after that. Today we decided to taste it winery by winery. So essentially we get 2 wines from one winery, then 3 wines from another, and 1 from the third winery.
Okay.
So slightly different, but it sort of makes sense, and I'll explain it in a second. So the second wine is red, and that's the second wine from Terre de Conti. And the idea was pretty much similar to the white wine. So again, this is outside of any appellation, and we went outside of the appellation or designation, the designated area of origin, because we wanted to have the freedom of doing what we want to do to achieve the wine that we want. So this particular wine is actually a blend of Montepulciano and Sangiovese, which is pretty normal for Marche region. But again, we took the Montepulciano and Sangiovese from regions where they're not allowed to be blended in together, and they're not allowed to be sort of put together in the bottle. Hence, it's an IGT market. So Montepulciano and Sangiovese, this is quite a classic blend, if you like. So if you look, it's in the funny way, it's very similar to a Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot. So where Merlot is the Montepulciano and Cabernet Sauvignon is the Sangiovese. So Montepulciano is famous for its black fruit, for its smooth texture. It's got this sort of softness about it. It's moreish. It's quite rich. There's plenty of black fruit to it most of the time. Sangiovese is more sort of it's a little more tannic. It's got more acidity to it. And it gives the wine a bit of a structure, if you like. Okay. Why don't we smell it? Let's have a little smell.
It smells really good.
Yeah. So I mean, when you smell that, this is about 75% Montepulciano. So we wanted the Montepulciano to sort of dominate the blend. And when you smell it, I mean, this is sort of a textbook Montepulciano with this sort of lovely black fruit. Thing about the blackberries, black plums. There's a little bit of spice to it, a touch of coffee as well, so quite complex. And it's warm and sort of ripe, but without being overripe and jammy, if that makes sense. Then when you taste it, so if it wasn't for the Sangiovese, it would be, the wine would be almost like too smooth and too mellow. So that bit of Sangiovese gives us a little bit of a kick, and gives you that sort of, kick of acidity to the end. It gives you that sort of freshness towards the end of the palate, and that sort of fresh cherry flavour, which is really nice, and it brings the balance to the blend, which is quite important for us. So again, the aim was to create interesting, balanced wine that is really easy to drink as well. When it comes to food matching, I mean, I like to think of it as a sort of everyday wine that you would have with your spaghetti bolognese or just a simple tomato pasta with with meat kind of thing. Quite happy to drink it on its own as well.
I'm interested in terms of obviously the first wine that we did with Terre de Conti. this being the second one, was it led in the same direction by customer reviews and sort of assessing what the data said and going with that, and that same element of balance sort of coming through? Is that
correct? Absolutely, yeah. So we based it in, it was actually based on one of the Portuguese wines, which sort of shown the same characteristics. So it had this lovely black fruit flavours on the nose, but on the palate it was actually quite crisp and fresh.
Right.
So that's exactly the same principle.
Yeah.
So we thought, we're going to do something slightly different. And again, the idea was to sort of, to retain the Marche sort of character,
Yeah.
but create the wine that our customers will hopefully like. Okay.
And something I also noticed with the wines in these two,
Mm-hmm.
they have they don't leave us a very long lasting aftertaste.
Mm.
It's something where you drink it, you easily forget how it tastes. So you want to drink again.
Yeah.
To
Dive back in.
have a feel of okay, well, I think this is good. Just try again to remember how it tastes, and which is good.
It's really nice.
Really nice.
Fantastic,
Easy to drink.
Yeah. Make it easy to drink.
Let's have more then.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, that's exactly the idea. We didn't want to create too complex wines that are too complex. They're supposed to be easy drinking, sort of everyday wines that you just happily sort of go back to. Okay.
Could I just ask, so you know the sort of like spiciness you got in your tongue at the end, did you say that was the
Sangiovese. Mm-hmm.
So the process in deciding how much you put in, that it's like a pleasant spicy aftertaste, or like you just put too much pepper on something?
Yeah,
what is the process of balancing that?
It's literally just blending and tasting.
Just trial and error for.
So when we tasted that, we had 15 different samples of the same grapes blended in different proportions.
Okay.
And that's how we choose which one is the sort of the sweet spot.
Yeah.
So the next one, it's actually the first DOC. So if you do get a Marche box, you will notice that most of the wines, apart from the first two, are actually either DOCs or DOCGs. This is the sort of level of quality that I will talk about a little bit later. So the next wine is from another winery called Tenuta d'Angelis, started by Mr. Alighiero di Angeli, so you can see on the picture over there. So this is the chap with the sort of grey hair. They started the winery in about 1950s. Right now it's run by another Alighiero, his grandson, who is a very dear friend of mine, and again we work very closely to bring these wines to the UK. So the next wine is, again, it's a blend. It's a Falerio DOC. So Falerio is, let me show you the map. So Falerio is the sort of dark green area in the southeast of Marche, and it's clustered between the sea and the mountains to the west. It's also a little bit higher up as well. So all the vineyards are around sort of 300 to 700 meters above the sea level. Loads of sort of different river valleys, loads of different aspects, loads of different hills, and quite a few different terroirs within that small area. When it comes to blend itself, Falerio has to be made from Trebbiano Toscano, plus Passerina and Pecorino. So this is the sort of regulation, if you like. So by law, if anything's got Falerio on the label, you have to use different proportions of those three grape varieties, okay? And they all give you slightly different things. So when you smell it, you again definitely get a sort of tropical fruit with that lovely sort of ripe citrus with a little bit of flowers and like green apple. There's a little bit of herbal note going on. There's almost like sage kind of thing. Quite a lot more complex, that's for sure. A little bit more interesting, I would say. This is, as you mentioned about the smell, this is the sort of wine that you want to take a minute and have a smell and think about what you smell. But I think the highlight is the palate. So when you taste it, so one thing I forgot to mention about Falerio is the soil. So it's very rich in limestone, and that gives you that almost spritzy minerality on the palate. I don't know if you can taste it or not, but it's definitely there. Sorry, what did you say?
No, I mean the taste sharp.
Yeah, it's got quite high acidity. That's for sure. Yeah. So what happens in Falerio in general, is it is warm, but it's quite high up as well. So the temperatures are cooler and the grapes retain the acidity. So when you say sharp, is sort of the freshness that the acidity brings to the wine. But what I really like about this particular wine is the aftertaste. Something that people refer to as the finish is kind of long, mineral, crisp, and refreshing. When it comes to food, I mean, again, most of the white wines in Marche, they work extremely well with the seafood. I mean, in generally speaking, most of the wine regions that produce wine to match their cuisine. In Marche, most of the food is based on the seafood and fish, and that's what the wines kind of are made for, to work well with those dishes. At the same time, it does have enough body and the structure to work with something a little bit richer. So think about like a light chicken salad with like a vinaigrette and tomatoes, something with a little bit of acidity to sort of balance that wine. Any questions?
That, it has that sort of tropical punch to it. What grape is it that gives it that, or is it the blend that gives it?
It's the Passerina. Passerina tends to be floral and sort of tropical. What is?
Because that's lovely.
It's interesting. So we are going to taste another Falerio, which is actually grown on slightly lower vineyards, at the lower altitude. And it will taste completely different. It will be a lot richer, a lot sort of rounder. So this is a good fresh example of Falerio, and we also have one on a different side of the spectrum. Okay. Any other questions?
I was going to say, in terms of because obviously you talk about the balance between the wines and the first two wines, specifically obviously want all wines to be balanced, but specifically for the first two, the balance between the wines in the box and the selection the customer is getting, that white wine is so different to the first white wine. Yeah. So much more complex. So much. I think you talked about the aftertaste. The aftertaste on that is so long.
Yeah,
and so
I can still taste it. Really
how much does that play into the composition of the box? The balance. You're picking a wine. It needs to balance with another white wine in the box and give you a different angle. They can't be the same. Is that something that plays in?
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, the balance within the wine itself. So when you drink it, the wine has to be balanced between the acidity, alcohol, the sweetness, and the rest of it. And then when it comes to the composition of the box itself, I want to make sure that we do have an example of each of the terroirs within the region that we working with. So you will see that with the wines later on. But with Marche, we've got the wines from the very north of Marche to the very south of Marche to the very east, almost literally in the sea, to the west in the mountains. So the idea was that when you do get a box from Wine 52, you get the whole selection of Marche. Okay.
It's great. It's really good.
Brilliant. Okay, guys. So moving on. This is really the highlight of the white wine in the box. So this is, if you look on the screen just for 2 seconds, so this is the level of quality, the official level of quality in Italy. Okay, so at the very bottom you start with the Vino di Tavola. So this is the wine without any sort of recognition, without any designation, if you like. Then you have the IGT, DOC, and DOCG. And DOCG is the highest level of quality in Italy you can get. And one of the wines that we do have in the box is the Offida DOCG Pecorino. It's also organic wine. So this is almost like the creme de la creme of the wine in Marche and in Italy and in the world, if you like. 100% Pecorino. Pecorino is quite an interesting grape variety in its own right because it was almost extinct. So it was in the 90s actually, when one of the wineries actually decided to rediscover some of the indigenous varieties from Marche, and they found literally a couple of vines of Pecorino. Pecorino was kind of forgotten a little bit because it's not a very productive grape variety, and it's quite susceptible to diseases. So in the past, when people or wineries were focusing on sort of volume rather than quality, they, when the time came to replanting the vineyards, they decided not to replant the Pecorino. as a result, it almost disappeared. And it wasn't, I forgot his name now, but if it wasn't for this particular guy who actually found those couple of vines of Pecorino, you would not have Pecorino today. These days, when people in winery, they focus more on quality of the wine rather than the quantity, Pecorino thrives. There's more and more Pecorino in the UK. There's plenty of Pecorino everywhere else, and they produce fantastic, delicious wines. So when you look on the map, so Ofida, the DOCG Ofida, is at the very south corner. So within the Falerio, there's that dotted blue line at the very bottom. That's where where DOCG Ofida is. So if anything's got DOCG Ofida on the label, that means it had to come from that little piece of land in the south of Marche. Very high up, the vineyards, they do get a lot of sea influence, a lot of breezes from the sea. So you would get almost a slight saltiness in the wine on the palate. Some people claim that there is a little bit of salt particles actually, salt particle sort of residue almost on the grape skin. That's why you can taste it in the wine. But let's smell the wine and let's see what you think about it. So Pecorino, again, depending on where you grow it, it can produce very different wines. But Ofida, it's the more sort of, it's definitely not a fruit-driven wine. It's quite herbal. You get a lot of the sort of sage. There's perhaps a little bit of anise to it. On top of that sort of lovely ripe fruit, stone fruit. So think the sort of ripe peaches. There's a little bit of flowers going on. So acacia, jasmine, that sort of thing. But really, really quite complex and perhaps a little bit different to anything that is out there on the market. And then when you try it, I mean, I just absolutely love the minerality to it. So when I mentioned about Falerio to having like this sort of rich limestone soil, it's exactly the same in Ofida. On top of that, you get higher altitude as well, and the wine produces a sort of lovely mineral, citrusy, crisp finish that lasts for a very, very long time. You'll see. I mean, even after a couple of minutes, you spat it out or sweat it out. Yeah. It will still last. It's absolutely delicious. Citrus, a lot of this sort of lovely, fresh but ripe citrus on the palate as well. But I think the part of the piece here is the minerality, the sort of lovely mineral crisp flavour. Again, a highlight and a signature of Marche wines. Okay. When it comes to food pairing, I mean, you can match it with many different things, that's for sure. But when the wine is that good, I'll probably just drink it on its own. I probably wouldn't want to mess about with it too much. Just have it on its own, nicely chilled as it is right now. I think is absolutely spot on. But you can definitely match it with some nice cheeses and seafood for sure. Any questions on this particular one?
Yeah, so DOCG is like that's a top dog, level of wine, and obviously DOC is probably pretty good too. What's the difference? You might mention it there. I think you might have alluded to it, but what is the difference between a DOC and a DOCG? What's the thing that tips it over into that sort of standard?
Quite a few things. So the way they check it and implement it is a lot stricter. So you would get a lot more control involved when you do have the DOCG status. The alcohol has to be higher. So the grapes you have to have better grapes essentially to gain it. For most of the red wines, they require oak. So we're going to try one of the red wines soon. And by law, you have to keep it in the barrel for say 12 or 16 months. So there are many different things that sort of take it this level up. And on top of that, before the region becomes DOCG, it had to be recognized for years and years and years as a superior to anything else. So it's not like you can't just apply for it as a region. It has to be sort of historically proven, if you like, to get that DOCG status. To give you an idea, there isn't that many DOCGs at all. One of the regions that's kind of big on DOCGs is the Piemonte, with Barolo, Barbaresco, and all that. In Marche, if I'm not mistaken, there are only 4 or 5.
Oh, wow.
So there's quite, it's not that many.
Yeah.
So these wines, when you see them on the shelf, it's
Really
kind
good
of,
speaker for
yeah,
customer to actually come across the one like that.
they sort of very, most of the time it's a small production, very sought after wines, and I'm not saying difficult to find, but yeah, they know us, kind of calling us as non-DOCG wines, if you like.
Gotcha. That's interesting. Thank you.
Very welcome. Very welcome.
All right.
Yeah. It's really great.
So just like something you mentioned, yeah, which I actually wanted to ask about you. I think you highlighted it while you were speaking. So the ones the DOCG come with high ABV, yeah.
It's the law,
So
yeah.
it's the law.
Yeah.
So they must be. So that means this is higher in alcohol content than every other wines that we take.
Not
Can you-
necessarily. It works in a slightly different way, and because of the climate changes, it's not so much of a problem as it used to be. But essentially, in the past, where the climate was a lot cooler, some of the regions would struggle to ripen the grapes properly. Essentially, meaning that the vintage wasn't good enough to produce certain amounts of sugar in the grapes, and you would end up with low level of alcohol in the wine.
Yeah.
So that's why they introduced the minimal alcohol level to the OCG wines, to sort of make sure that in the bad vintage you wouldn't be able to make a DOCG wine, even despite the fact that you are within that region.
Yeah.
Does it make sense?
Of course.
So you can rig it.
Yeah, essentially, yeah. But it's, even to these days, like, during the bad vintages, some of the wineries, they wouldn't even put their own name on the bottle. They would just sell it as something else, so to sort of protect their reputation.
Yeah.
And that's the sort of idea behind the alcohol, minimum alcohol level for the OCG. And it really depends on the vintage, because I think that most of the wines we're tasting today are from 2022, which is quite a good vintage in Marche, and alcohol wasn't a problem at all. Every single wine sort of achieved the 12-13% that they're looking for.
Okay.
But in the bad vintages, they might only get to like 11 or 10%, and chaptalizing is not legally allowed actually. So, do we have any other questions on
Good.
the designations of origin, or no? Good to go? Smashing, fantastic. I'm just gonna quick. Right, so we are moving back to red wine right now. So this is your wine number 5. And again, so this is the third wine from Tenuta d'Angelis. And this is Rosso Piceno. So if I show it to you on the map, it's one of the largest regions. So if you look at this sort of green dotted line, starting from the very south to almost sort of the, what are you doing? Can you see Jesi?
Yeah.
Right in the middle? So that's where it ends. So it almost covers, I would say, probably not half, but a decent bit of Marche. So you can have many different versions of Rosso Piceno because of that larger catchment area that it can come from. This one, it's definitely on the riper side. So again, Rosso Piceno by law has to be a blend of Montepulciano and Sangiovese. In this case, this is a Montepulciano driven wine. So we have, if I'm not mistaken, it's about 60% of Montepulciano. So again, you're going to have this sort of lovely black fruits, very ripe. Sweet but not jammy. This is quite interesting about Marche. They do get plenty of ripe fruits without the sugar, if that makes sense. So why don't we have a smell? So it's very sort of pretty on the nose. It gives you that sort of, you smell it and you smile. It's got this sort of lovely sweet blueberry, blackberry flavour to it. There's a bit of flowery note to it. This sort of like violets, that sort of thing.
Definitely smell like chocolate.
There's a bit of chocolate. Yeah, Montepulciano and Sangiovese, they give you this sort of chocolatey flavour to it. But generally speaking, a lovely sort of welcoming, ripe fruits, pretty nose. Okay. When you taste it, so initially, lovely sweet fruits. Again, the wine is completely dry. It's got 2 grams of execution, but it gives you that sort of lovely, ripe, sweet fruit flavour. Think about this sort of lovely ripe blueberries with a little bit of spice perhaps. Again, this sort of flowery thing coming through on the palate. Touch of acidity from Sangiovese, touch of this sort of kick that we remember from the second wine we tasted.
Yeah.
But definitely smooth, mellow, easy to drink. Again, this is a good bottle of wine just to drink on its own. It's a very good bottle of wine to match with meat. Think about like something that likes sweetness. So think about duck breast and something like that would be absolutely delicious. Barbecued pork, that would be good with it. Yeah, so things like that.
Does that have less Sangiovese in it than the last one?
Correct. 25.
It didn't have quite the same
Yeah,
sort of spiciness.
It's got a little bit less Sangiovese to it, yeah. And also it comes from, the Montepulciano comes from a warmer site in Rosso Piceno. Again, we are going to taste another Rosso Piceno which comes from higher altitude. And it's a similar wine, but it's got completely different structure to this one. So this one is all about this sort of smooth, mellow texture with plenty of ripe fruit, and this is what we sort of wanted with it. Okay.
Gotcha. Thank you.
When I first tried that, I got a big sort of a pronounced hit of like very smooth but tannins in my mouth, and I really enjoyed it. What I'm curious about is with tannins, do you want them to be pronounced? I mean, they were super smooth, but like that was the first thing I felt. Do you want that to be pronounced? Do you sometimes underplay it with red wines, or are you looking for that sort of standout? What is there?
It's not the sort of thing that you can choose. So it really depends on the grape variety and the vineyards and the vintage and the rest of it, and the winemaker and when they picked the wine and how ripe the grapes were and the rest of it. So in this particular instance, when you said there's plenty of tannins on the right, you're completely right. Both of the grape varieties, the Montepulciano maybe less so, but Sangiovese is quite famous for being quite tannic and quite acidic. However, because of this particular vineyard and how good it is and the exposure to the sun, so this vineyard is actually exposed. It's got southern exposure, which means it gets a lot of sun. The tannins are there, as you said, but at the same time they're smooth and mellow. And in my humble opinion, they just add to the wine. So if the more tannins you have, the more acidity that you have, as long as they balance, the better the body of the wine, and the more enjoyable the bottle of wine is.
Yeah.
And the wine tasted very dry. Like the moment you drink
That'll
it,
be time.
it gives you a very quick.
Yeah.
on your mouth.
Yeah,
That's the tannins. Yeah. Exactly the same thing as think about drinking like very strong tea.
Yeah.
You get the same sort of drying sensation in your guts.
Exactly.
That's tannins. Yeah.
Wow.
Awesome.
Alright.
Is the Montepulciano grape the most dominant in Le Marche, would you say?
It is the most widely planted reds, if I'm not mistaken. So Verdicchio is the white, and I think it takes over Montepulciano. Montepulciano is the second most planted grape variety, and as a whole, and the main red grape variety. After Sangiovese, I think. Sorry, I might have mistaken that with other so actually, sorry. No. Yeah, you're gonna have to edit that. Is the Sangiovese that?
It was a trick question, I knew all along.
Yeah. No, it's because I was working in Abruzzo today, and Abruzzo Montepulciano is the highest planted grape variety. Marche further north, I think, is the Sangiovese. Don't ask tricky questions. Good stuff. Are we ready to move on?
Yes.
Smashing. Okay, so this is your Sangiovese. There you go. 100% Sangiovese from Cantina di Castignano. Again, it's quite a significant producer in Marche. They were established in 1960s. I'm not 100% sure how many hectares of vineyards they do have, but it's quite a lot. This is quite a significant producer. Nevertheless, they do focus on quality, and this particular wine is 100% Sangiovese, so hopefully you'll be able to see the difference between the two blends that we've tasted with Sangiovese and 100% Sangiovese on its own. So just to give you an idea, it should be all about the sort of fresh, vivid red fruit. So think about the red kind of sour cherry flavour and smell. Plus on top of that, Sangiovese tends to be quite spicy. There's a little bit of sort of this peppery notes coming through on the nose. But definitely the main thing that dominates the nose is the lovely red sour cherry. Again, a ripe sour cherry, if that makes sense. We are in Marche at the end of the day. When you taste this, so again, super fresh, super vivid, loads of that sour cherry coming through again, a little bit of spiciness perhaps, and and this is, I would say this is a fruit wine. You definitely want to have something with a little bit of acidity. So think of tomato sauce based dishes. So a very very good companion to most of the dishes in Italy. But you need some foods to sort of balance that acidity, balance that tannins. On its own, again, light chilled, I think it'd be quite good. But it's definitely a food wine. Any thoughts on that?
I really like that. I really like that spicy element to it as well. So the first one, it was like, that real spiciness. And the second one, also, that was a little bit mellower. And that one is,
that's a kick. That's
exactly my sort of thing. I like that kick that you get, and it lasts a little bit.
Good stuff. This is exactly what Sangiovese does to the other blends. It's got that sort of kick of acidity in the tannins.
I mean, I don't know if everybody else does, because I sometimes tend to be wrong when I say this.
Go for it.
But I do feel that that's more tannic than the other two.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
When I say that, people
absolutely.
disagree with me.
Definitely more tannic. Yeah.
I think the bitterness comes through quite a lot, and I really love that in beer that I drink quite a lot. I enjoy that deeply. I think bitterness is really good. You say it as a word and people are like, oh, it's bitter, but actually it's like a really nice sensation when you drink it.
Mhm.
That's not something. Is that common in wine? That feels to me to be quite a standard thing specifically with this wine. Would that be correct?
The bitterness in the wine again is a little bit like when you say acidic wine and when you say crisp wine. It means exactly the same, but acidity doesn't sound that good.
Right. Yeah.
Would bitter be something you'd move away from, say, in terms of if
Not
you're selling it?
not necessary, but again, it depends really on what wine are you looking for. Because if you're looking for it's just a smooth mellow bottle of wine to drink on its own, you probably don't want a bitter wine. But then if you want to a wine that complements certain foods, bitterness works. Bitterness is good. When you look at Barolos and Barbarescos and all these sort of super tannic acidic wines, again on its own they too much, but then you match them with food and they become alive and they're delicious and work. Georgia is probably a prime example of that.
That's what I thought.
Georgian wines drink them on their own, and it's too much.
Yeah.
But then the second you have it with the beautiful Georgian foods, it all makes sense.
That was the first thing I thought of Saperavi. That's what that immediately reminded me of. That sort of kind of depth to the flavour in it.
It definitely adds the complexity to the wine. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Good stuff. Shall we? All right. Okay. This is the last of the first lot. Are we ready for a break? Smashing. Right, guys. Batch number 2. And starting with a classic, it doesn't get any more classic than that when it comes to Verdicchio and Marche. So this is 100% Verdicchio from a sub-region of Verdicchio del Castelli de Iesi Classico, which is regarded. This is another DOC, so one of the higher end wines within Marche, regarded as one of the best places to grow Verdicchio as a grape variety. Coming back quickly to the grape variety itself, Verdicchio is quite often referred to as the best and highest quality white grape variety of Italy. There are several reasons for that, but the main ones are it retains the acidity, it gives you loads of sugar, that translates to alcohol in body, and it's got fantastic structure and great fruit flavour. So it's actually the same grape variety as Trebbiano di Soave and Trebbiano di Lugano from the north. That was sort of recently proven by DNA tests. So the wine you're going to taste is made by Giovanni Piersanti. So this is the lovely chap on the picture over there, and the label is an avatar of his face. But no, it's not. But a lovely chap, and he's an absolutely he's absolutely brilliant once you manage to talk to him, because he doesn't use phones, internet, or anything else. So it's kind of like dealing with someone from 1940s. Like they don't really reply to any emails or phone calls or anything like that. So luckily, I know the guy who knows him, who was sort of like a middleman between us two. But we managed to get there. They've been producing wine from 1955 or something like along those lines, and they are one of the largest and one of the best producers within that catchment area. Right, let's have a little smell. So bear in mind, this is 100% Verdicchio, without any Sauvignon, without anything like that. So when you smell it, Verdicchio is quite famous for two things. So first of all, you definitely get the sort of grapefruit skin smell.
Yeah.
That's definitely there. That sort of citrusy, slightly bitter smell, but in the good way. And on top of that, you think of I don't know if you ever had a green almond, like a fresh almond, not dried. That almond skin has got that sort of very distinctive, slightly nutty, but like an underripe nut.
Okay.
I know it sounds like a kind of sommelier spiel, but it's got that sort of slightly distinctive smell to it. It's almost like a signature of Verdicchio. So slightly different to anything else that you find on the market. But really the highlight is the palate. So let's have a little taste. So first of all, you get this sort of lovely, rich, round mid palate. Again, plenty of citrus.
Yeah.
And it finishes with this, like, for me, it's this sort of excellent lemon-like acidity that sort of lifts everything up. And again, the balance is incredible. In my humble opinion, one of the probably nicest white wines to drink right now is a straight Verdicchio. Especially when you look at the classic like this is DOCG, so regarded as the highest quality of Verdicchio grape. When it comes to food matching, it definitely has enough body to support slightly richer dishes. So look at seafood and fish, but think maybe like something along the lines of like smoked halibut, something with a little bit more kind of fat and flavour, just to support that body and that lovely acidity that you have. Shrimps, grilled shrimps, tuna, anything like that works really, really quite well. But again, I'll be quite happy just drinking on its own, to be honest. I think it's so nicely balanced, so crisp, so fresh, and so well made that it makes a decent glass of wine just to drink on its own. Any questions on that wine?
More, please, basically.
It's really refreshing.
Yeah.
Refreshing, fresh, well made. Yeah.
That sort of citrus kick through it and
Exactly.
the whole thing is really, really Moorish, really, really lovely.
Yeah.
I think I know there's a lot of food pairing and stuff, and obviously food pairing is important to bring some wines alive, but maybe that's wrong, but I would happily drink that by itself.
I'm with you. Yeah, it's a bit like that Pecorino that we've tasted before. It's the sort of wine that you could match it with fruit, but it's good enough to drink on it.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Do we have any other questions?
It's a random question about Verdicchio. It's saying that it's the one of the most, or if not the most popular grape variety. What led it to become that? What is it about that people so relish?
It's not the most popular grape variety. It's regarded as one of the highest quality.
Highest quality. Sorry.
Yeah,
Okay.
and this is by, it's not by general public. It's by sort of the wine critics and wine people in general. But the general public, I'm actually quite surprised that this is not in the same league as Sauvignon Blanc or Pinot Grigio,
Yeah.
because it's an excellent value for money. These are not expensive wines, and I generally think this is better than most of the Sauvignons and Pinot Grigios on the market.
Marketing, bro.
Yeah, maybe something to do with the name. Difficult to read, difficult to pronounce. I don't know whether that might be the part. Maybe I think I mentioned the story of the bottle, and so maybe it does have some of in the same way as Lambrusco. So Lambrusco's got this sort of bad image from the past.
Yeah.
So Verdicchio has a little bit of that going on as well.
Got it.
But then when you taste the Verdicchio now, I mean it's one of the nicest white wines you can get in Italy. And it is becoming more and more popular, but I think it's just going to take a little bit of time to get over that, That's that thing from the past.
Flagship.
Okay. Good stuff.
Is this 2022 as well?
2022. Mm-hmm. Super fresh. Verdicchio can age quite well. So it's in the same way as a good Riesling or a good Chenin Blanc, because of the acidity and the weight and that that sugar, initial sugar, not after the fermentation, otherwise it turns to alcohol. It actually can age for quite a long time. And some of the best examples, they develop this sort of beautiful nutty flavors, and this remains still fresh and delicious. So there are two ways you can drink Verdicchio. You can actually keep it or drink it fresh, or they make dessert wine out of it as well. Sparkling wine, because of the acidity, is very good for sparkling wine as well. So in the same way as Chenin Blanc is quite a versatile, good grape variety. Okay.
Good.
Brilliant. Okay. Let's move on. The second wine comes from the winery called Chuchu, and that roughly translates to bottoms up, like drink up, or something along those lines. So very, very humble name. Started in 1970, a medium-sized producer. They've got about 150-ish hectares, if I'm not mistaken. But again, family run, focus on quality only. They don't really produce a lot of wine, but every single bottle I've tried from these guys is of very, very high quality. So this is the second Falerio we are going to taste today. So remember the first one was sort of very crisp, very vivid. It was all about the sort of lime and lemon citrus fruit in general. So that was, I can't remember which one was it now, in number three. So this is the same area, so it's a Falerio DOC. However, this one comes from the vineyards that are slightly lower, which means warmer climate and riper fruits. Okay. So when you smell it, I don't know if you remember the first one. The first one was all about the citrus. This is more about the orchard fruit. So think about this ripe sort of red apple, pear. There's definitely a little bit of this sort of floral thing coming from the Passerina and from the Trebbiano. So exactly the same grape varieties, the same sub-region, but just different aspects of vineyards and different altitude, and this is what you get. So completely different wine. So yeah, once you taste it, you will notice that on the palate, this is rounder and softer than the first Falerio. So again, this is the effect of slightly warmer climate and riper fruit. The flavour profile, again, completely different. So you're talking here about the sort of ripe orchard fruit. Again, this sort of pear and apple comes through on the palate. It's softer, it's rounder. However, the acidity is still there. So when I say acidity, it gives you that sort of lovely crisp finish at the end. So it's not just fat and heavy, it's actually quite nicely balanced despite having loads of flavour. Do we like this one?
Yeah, I feel it's a bit more tangy. I don't know if that's the right word.
Yeah,
or it's compared to the last one.
That's it.
It sort of hangs around, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's like that sort of tanginess on the tongue for
Yeah.
quite a long time.
Yeah.
After it's got a nice line.
Again, so I don't know if you remember from the first time I was talking about Falerio. Falerio's got loads of limestone in the soil, and it's a bit like in Champagne or several different regions in the world. And when you grow vines in that rich limestone soil, they pick up some of the minerals, and those minerals get transferred to the grapes, and that's why you get this sort of lively sensation, sort of minerality on the palate, if you like. No, I think the wine is delicious, and again, one of the wines which you can quite happily just drink on its own. I think it's super interesting, very well balanced. But yeah, equally you can match it with several different dishes. I think because of the slightly richer body and the rounder texture, I think you can match it with something like chicken or turkey.
Yeah.
So if you're having a Christmas dinner, that's a decent bottle of wine to choose for that occasion. Any other questions?
Oh, good.
It's not so much a question. It's just I feel it's quite a fun wine with the way that it sort of when you first drink it, it takes you through a couple of different steps. And it feels like you're going through a bit of a journey, and it's quite a fun wine with that little sort of tanginess at the end. It's like, when you have one of those sweets that sort of tingles at the end, and it's quite
keeps
fun.
you interested.
Yeah, it's not boring. It's not over quickly. It has that right, like Chris is saying. It's really lovely. Really enjoy it. I quite like Falerio.
Yeah, brilliant wine. It's like you don't see a lot of it in the UK, which is a bit of a shame. But yeah, good stuff. Right, shall we move on?
Yes.
So next one So again, similarly to Falerio, this is Rosso Piceno, so DOC. So again, the sort of higher end of the quality level in Italy. However, the first Rosso Piceno we tasted was sort of super ripe, super mellow, super easy to drink, all about this sort of, you know, ripe red fruit and black fruits. This is slightly different. This is a little bit more serious, if you like. So when you smell it, you still get, you know, lovely black fruit, but there is definitely something else going on as well. There's a little bit more chocolate, like think of a dark chocolate, sweet spice like cloves, figs, and there's quite a lot of different things going on. So again, this vineyard is actually much higher up than the first Rosso Piceno we've tasted, and they sort of further south as well. So you get a little bit more complexity in the nose and slightly different flavour profile. It's a little bit more serious, if that makes sense. And it could actually age quite well, that wine. So on the palate, I mean, this is again a blend of Montepulciano and Sangiovese. However, here we have a lot more Sangiovese. So plenty more tannins, so it's more acidity. You still get this lovely fruit from Montepulciano. However, the palate is definitely dominated by the Sangiovese. So this lovely kind of, you know, sour cherry kick with this lovely acidity and the tannins. However, you know, the balance is still there. You know, it's not like it's offensive or anything like that. You can probably quite happily drink it on its own. However, this is the food wine. You know, I want a decent steak with, you know, nice kind of fat next to it. Lamb shanks, you know, something like that. You want something with a kick just to balance the acidity and the tannins. Any thoughts on that?
I like it. It's sour when you first try it, but then it's got a really nice like aftertaste. Like it's not.
Yeah.
It's really like a chill aftertaste. It's nice.
So generally speaking, the longer the taste lasts in your mouth, the better the wine, as long as it's a pleasant taste, if that makes sense. But yeah, this definitely lingers for quite a bit. I forgot to mention, so all the wines from Chuchu, they actually certified organic, which is a bit of a pain to actually do. But I'm pretty sure they even have the, yeah, there you go. So you can clearly see they actually do have proper log-in certification for being organic. And
It's quite a big effort to become organic, isn't it? There's a lot of sort of hoops to jump through to get that, isn't it?
It's not uneasy.
There's a lot that kind of don't bother because there's so much.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it costs a lot of money, effort, and time to actually do it. Yeah, because you know it's much easier to just spray the vineyard with pesticides and forget about, you know, funguses and all the rest of it. When you want to do it naturally, you really have to care about each single vine and make sure everything is spot on and works. Okay. Any other questions?
No, it's a minute.
Brilliant. Okay, let's move on. So next one. This is an interesting one. So this is a grape variety called Lacrima. And again, this is one of the DOCs. So this is a Lacrima di Mora di Alba. I can show you on the map where it is. It's roughly. So essentially, it's within the Verdicchio do Castelli di Iesi area. If you look at this red dotted line just north from the Iesi town, so this is where it is. So we're looking at it's an area very close to the sea, so slightly warmer than the sort of west of Marche, but they do have a lot of rivers coming through that region and a lot of valleys. And basically, what happens is the wind. If I'm not mistaken, it's in the morning it comes from the mountains, and then in the evening it comes from the sea. So those vineyards are constantly ventilated, and what it does, it sort of eradicates all the diseases. So you know, if it wasn't for that, the grapes would just essentially, not always, but sometimes rot on the vine. So quite an interesting sub-region of Marche. But the grape variety is even more interesting. And I'm pretty sure you have never tried Lacrima before. So Lacrima translates to tear, and there are two sort of theories behind that. So the first one is that the grapes, they have tendency to split, and the juice runs out of it. So that's why it says, you know, it's a tear. The second theory is that the wine growers and winemakers, they cry when they grow Lacrima because it's such a difficult grape variety to grow. So there are two theories behind that, and it's kind of a bit like with Pecorino, not so much so, but it's one of the sort of grape varieties that's been revived because it's very interesting. It's very difficult to grow, but when you get it right, it produces delicious, interesting, and very different wines. So let's smell that and let's see what you think about it.
It's a very distinctive smell.
It's unlike anything
I
else.
can't pinpoint it.
Yeah.
It's not like any red wine I smelled
And
before.
to be honest with you, I don't think maybe twice I saw a Lacrima di Mora in the shop in the UK. It doesn't really exist. And now you're going to have to cut it out. But when you smell it, I don't know if we have any Catholics and any Christians in here, but think about funeral and blueberries. You know what I mean? When you go to the church and they have plenty of lilies and flowers in the church, right?
Take it back to his wedding.
Joking aside, very flowery nose. I mean, plenty of violets, plenty of lilies on top of the sort of blueberry smell. And again, I don't think I have ever tasted a grape variety that smells like that. I don't think it actually exists. Such a distinctive floral grape variety, especially reds. I don't think it exists. So very, very interesting, that's for sure. It's also one of the things to notice about this particular grape is the color. So it's quite intense, it's quite a deep colored wine. However, wine, when you taste it, it's not actually heavy. It's actually fairly light wine, but with a lot of color and quite a lot of tannins to it. Again, very different, very interesting. It's got a sort of lovely dry finish to it. I find it interesting enough to sort of drink on its own, but I would definitely complement the sort of typical Italian cuisine. So again, think about the sort of tomato with pasta with rich sauces, maybe like braised meats, slow cooked meats, that sort of thing. Good with cheeses as well, because of that acidity, because of the tannins, that's going to work very, very quite well, and extremely well made as well. Thoughts on that? Do we like that?
I think to me, you can have like a strawberry milkshake or a strawberry juice or something, and you get this sense of strawberry. That actually tastes like a strawberry.
Mm-hmm.
It has the lightness, it has the juiciness, it has that sort of real, sort of proper, authentic flavour. It's really, really, really lovely. It comes through a lot of strawberry to me. Really distinctive on the nose and really, really pleasant to drink. I love it. It's light, it's refreshing, but it's still fruity. I really love it.
It's the reason there's not a lot of Lacrima wine in the UK. Is it just because of how difficult it is to grow?
There isn't a lot of it produced
to
start with, and it's just not very popular with the producers and with the importers. Like as I said, maybe I've seen it twice in the shop, and that was like a very sort of Italian, little Italian sort of wine shop.
They need to taste a couple more.
But yeah, very, very interesting, and I thought this would be, the sort of wine that you could take to the party where there's a lot of wine people, and you say like, right, you've never tasted anything like that before. Cool, nice one, very good.
Could be called Lacrima because it's so good you cry.
Awesome, there we go. That's a
Very
selling. Cool guys, next wine, so we're going back to wine, so I hope you had some water and some breadsticks and the rest of it. So this is a 100% Passerina made by Casa Farneto. So quite a small sort of boutique winery, started in 1995 if I'm not mistaken. So again, family run, focus on quality only. They don't produce huge amount of wines, but what they do produce is delicious. And this is as I mentioned, 100% Passerina. The name derives from a word passero, which translates to sparrow, because apparently sparrows like eating these grapes. So they do have a little bit of a pest issue when they grow Passerina. But Passerina, generally speaking, is what people in Marche drink. So this is like their equivalent of Pinot Grigio and Sauvignon Blanc in Italy. So when you smell it, it's got definitely the sort of citrusy, lemony freshness on the nose, with a little bit of pear perhaps, some green apple, a little bit of herbaceousness. But you know, the main thing you smell is definitely that sort of lime, lemon freshness. Then on palate, again, similar to Verdicchio in the sense it's got a good weight, but it's got a lot more acidity, and again that sort of lemony, limey freshness. That's what takes over the palate. And you know, in Marche, when I was talking to Lisa, he told me that, you know, this is the sort of wine that it's like a pre-drink, you know, or pre-dinner kind of aperitif you would have, just to sort of awaken your palate, you know, and get your taste buds ready for the food. However, you know, when you take that bottle to the UK, I think this is a great wine to drink with things like, you know, fish and chips, because of that acidity and that lemony flavour that would just sort of cleanse your palate and get you ready for another bite. Equally, things like moule marinier, you know, lovely mussels with rich creamy sauce, where that sort of lemony, limey acidity will clean your palate again. So yeah, a very well made, very interesting bottle of wine. And again, something I'm really looking forward to see the feedback about this wine, because I think that this could be a very, very sort of good equivalent to the sort of easy drinking, you know, Pinot Grigios and Sauvignon Blancs that most people drink. What do you think?
It's funny, this is one of these wines where, like, on the nose it's really complex and you really don't know what to anticipate. Like, you anticipate like a lot of full body, but it's way more subtle on the palate than you would like expect. It's really easy to drink. Yeah, really, really easy to drink. Definitely one of those I think I could drink like without pairing it with food. But yeah, I'm just curious, like, is there any like technique that is very common when it comes to wines that are like so different when it comes to the nose and then the palate? Like, there's just a bit of like a surprise reaction when you do taste it.
Yeah, I don't think it's so much technique. I think it's just down to the grape variety.
Okay.
So, you know, so some of the grape varieties like Passerina is a good example. It's got quite a lot going on the nose. As you mentioned, you know, you've got the citrus, the floral things going on. There's that slight bitterness as well. But on the palate, it's all about the citrusy, lemony freshness, which is quite interesting. So there are quite a few. I mean, Lacrima was another example where, you know, on the nose it was just everything and anything. While it was on the palate, it was a little bit more subtle and sort of more about the fruit flavours. But yeah, no, generally speaking, I was very impressed with this wine, and that's why I thought, you know, this is a good sort of wine to include in the box and give our customers an idea of what people over there drink. And yeah, right. Okay, let's move on to the last one. And as usual, I sort of kept the maybe not the best, but the most interesting one to the very last. So this is something called a Merano, and it's a 2015 Montepulciano. So this is 100% Montepulciano, and it's actually, this is an IGT market. So despite the price tag that it's got, despite how little they produce of it, is labelled as one of the lowest quality wines within market. The reason for that is the vineyard is actually outside of any appellation that allows Montepulciano to sort of be within, you know, to have on the label. So when you look on the map, this is if you see the boundary of Rosso Piceno. So this is the sort of dotted green line. This is just outside it. So when you see the river, I think it's Maturo River, very close to the city called Fano on the coast. So that's where it is. Essentially, they claim that, you know, it's almost too cold to grow Montepulciano over there. However, this was the grandfather of the guy who owns the winery. I forgot his name. Apologies. Who's planted that vineyard, and they have, don't lie to you, but the vines are about 80-year-old. So they're very old, they produce very, very little grapes, but they're super concentrated. And despite the cooler climate over there, they actually manage to produce ripe grapes and very, very good for making wine. So this is 2015. They put the wine for 18 months in Sauvignon oak and after 18 months in the oak, they take it out and they keep it in the bottle for another 18 months. So they only release it to the market when it's like ready to go. This is ready to drink. And this one being 2015, it had additional several years in the bottle to fully develop. So when you smell it, I mean, this is completely different wine to anything else that we've tasted so far. Yeah. It's a lot more serious, and people, I mean, Montepulciano is a strange grape variety because it can produce, so many different types of wine. This to me, like the first time I smelled it, it sort of reminded me of like a Saint-Emilion Grand Cru, a Bordeaux from the right bank, from a warmer vintage. So you get a lot of complexity in that wine. There's a lot of this sort of dried fruit. Think of like pencil shaving. Think of oak. Think of spice, like sweet spice. Think of this sort of leathery, earthy, savoury aromas. Extremely, extremely complex on the nose. Again, to find a Montepulciano like this is quite a challenge. And as I mentioned to a few of you before, you can't just go and buy it. Like you're allocated a couple of bottles if you are lucky. So they don't really produce a lot of it because the vineyard is tiny. I think they produced about 5,000 bottles in 2015, and that was it. So we are extremely lucky to have a couple of bottles in our boxes. But let's try the wine and let's see what you think about it.
When you say they weren't produced in 2015, is that what you say?
Mm-hmm.
Are they still producing it in Alden, or is that the batch?
No, that's it.
This is the batch.
That's it. It's 2015, that's it. Right. They didn't make any 2016, I believe, because the vintage wasn't good enough. So they only sort of do it in
So
the
what's the reason behind that then?
It's their flagship, so it's something that they show off with, really. So this is the best they can do, they can produce. And they only make it in the very best vintages to make sure that the quality stays consistent. Yeah, so... Yeah, go on. Sorry.
I was with this age further then?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
At least another 5-10 years, I would say, easy. Yeah. It will probably go, I mean, for me, right now, it's probably at its best because there is still a little bit of fruit going on. You have this sort of secondary and tertiary aromatics, this sort of leathery, earthy, there is a little bit of that sort of smoke and spice going on. There's quite a lot to it, but it's still relatively fresh. If you kept it for another 5 to 10 years, it would probably go towards this slightly mushroomy, more earthy flavours, which again are very interesting. But I like that touch of fruit as well. Yeah. I think that right now is where it should be.
Yeah. It's still got that fruitiness, but it's got that smoke. They combined together, it gives a level of seriousness to it that's...
Oh, the complexity is incredible. I mean, you start with sort of leathery, smoky, earthy flavours, and it actually ends up with this sort of lovely freshness and fruit still. So yeah, very, very interesting bottle of wine. And as I said, we are super lucky to be able to buy some of it and give it to our customers. And it really reminds me of a good Saint-Emilion Grand Cru. Which is quite incredible considering this is a Montepulciano from central Italy.
Definitely, you said that earthiness is when I first do the sniff, it reminded me of certain whiskies. With that earthiness and that sort of peatiness almost. Am I wrong there?
No, but
that'll be influence of the oak barrel.
Yeah. It comes into what I was going to ask, which was like, I'm curious. Maybe you've already said it before. I don't know, but is this? In terms of the food pairings that you've talked about before, with all the different wines, is there a specific food pairing you would go with this that's obvious, it's jumping off the charts? Or for me, I drink that and I think, while it's incredibly complex and there's a lot to it, is there an essence of you can just drink that by itself and enjoy that for what it is? That's the entertainment.
Oh yeah, I would say so. Absolutely, yeah. I mean, if anything, I would probably enjoy it with a nice cheese board.
Yeah.
Nice, like a very good cheese board and a couple of glasses of that. Because you don't just spoil it. It's the same sort of thing as with that Pecorino, very much so. You can match it with a variety of different dishes. This would probably go very well with a nice ribeye steak and the rest of it because it's still got quite a bit of tannins and acidity to it. But I think it's so good that you're just sort of wasting the wine. Just drink it on its own. Enjoy the wine.
How old did you say the vines were?
About 80-year-olds, yeah.
Wow.
very good.
That's
It's
it.
part of the ocean.
Yeah.
And it's in the coolest, like one of the coolest sub-regions of Marche where they think that Montepulciano is not going to ripen for it.
Right.
Which is partially why it allows it to sort of age that long. Because, you know, growing in that cooler climates, the grapes have higher acidity and that allows the wine to age. Do you like it?
Yeah.
Good. Right guys, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you here today. Thanks very much for your time. I really hope you enjoyed the wines and I certainly hope our customers will enjoy them too. Thank you.